Hello and welcome to episode 196 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. This show is going live on Halloween Day, so it's our annual tradition to have Sarah Says on to celebrate. In 2024, we're going to change things up for Halloween. Today, we're talking about when things get scary on a Disney vacation. We're getting close to our 200th episode of the show. 90% of podcasts give up after 3 episodes. Of the 200,000 podcasts that make it past 3 episodes, 90% of those fail before reaching 20 episodes. Over the course of that time, we have raised money for domestic violence survivors, Boys and Girls Club of America, and the LGBTQ+ community. We have also focused on inclusion, and I'm very proud of our particular focus on disability access in theme parks. For me, I've made some incredible friendships through the show. Please do me a favor and make sure that you're subscribed to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. It just takes a few seconds, and make sure that we can continue to do this. Right now, let's welcome Sarah Says back to the show. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Thank you for having me back.
So today is officially Halloween, and we love to have our Halloween-themed episodes. A couple years ago, we talked about Haunted Mansion. Last year, we talked about the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. And now today, we decided to veer off the beaten path, if you will, and do something a little different. We are going to talk about when a Disney trip gets scary. So it's actually going to be a little more fun, but still Halloween themed. When scary things happen at Walt Disney World, at Disneyland, and you have to adjust. And you texted me a couple days ago, Sarah, saying you have the perfect story to start this episode.
Well, I don't know if it's perfect, but it made my trip scary because it made it really, really uncomfortable and unfortunate. So my sister and I went to Disneyland many, many moons ago after our cousin's wedding, and it poured rain. And as I was walking in my UGG boots, because it was that time, it was that thing, they started to fill with water. Like slowly fill with water as I'm walking through Disney and And so, like I said, not really scary, but very unfortunate thing to happen when you're at Disney, because then everywhere I went, my shoe would fall off because the water weighted down and ripped it off. But you know what? My sister saved the day, and I survived my trip she's incredibly over-prepared, and she saved the day because she had an extra pair of shoes in the locker.
Well, see, that is the perfect way to start this conversation because A, it's funny, B, people can relate to it, but C, while we decided to do this for Halloween as a little joke of scary things that happen when you're at Disney, one of the things we want to do is actually provide different things you can do to either avoid them or to sort of recalibrate when you're there. So that is the perfect thing. I don't know if a lot of people would think to bring an extra pair of shoes, but especially if you're talking about a Walt Disney World vacation and you're going to get that 2:00 in the afternoon rainstorm that happens almost like clockwork over the course of the summer. Having an extra pair of shoes, having just, you know what, like everybody wants their fashion, everybody wants their Instagram to be popping, but sometimes you just have to put plastic bags over your shoes while you run to the next attraction, and it's something that you can be prepared for these things to happen at Walt Disney World and Disneyland. So while it's scary, you can avoid these things.
Yeah, don't wear UGG boots to the parks. I mean, we were there in February, so it was cold. So I'm like, oh, yeah, it'll be great. No, they're giant sponges. Don't do it. A word of caution.
And I do think it is underrated how much the parks just get wet a lot of the times.
Yes.
Like, even at the beginning of the day, when they like wet down Main Street USA. So even if it's dry as a bone while you're waiting to get into the park, when you
Mm-hmm.
get in there, the ground's a little slippery, it's a little wet, so you do need to be prepared for that. And obviously, we'll just move right on to this because one of the big things that can happen when you're in the parks is you get that rainstorm or you get inclement weather. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit as a way to not let it ruin your day. I know I have been many, many times to Magic Kingdom and it just starts pouring and everybody starts leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 100% the wrong thing to do in this situation. Yes, it is scary. It's starting to rain, and you're afraid, oh my goodness, this rain doesn't look like it's ever going to stop. Are we going to miss fireworks? Are we going to have this happen? Are we going to have this happen? Let's just go back to the resort, and we'll figure things out when we get back there. Well, I tell you what, especially talking about Walt Disney World in Florida, by the time you get back to your resort, that rain is going to be done.
Yep.
And everybody who just sat in Cosmic Rays or went and saw the Hall of Presidents or
Mhm.
the brand new Country Bear musical Jamboree, those people are now in an empty theme park. So keep that in mind if you can, that it seems scary, but just wait it out and sometimes the best thing will happen.
And there are so many places that you can go to hide from the rain, whether you duck into shops or, like you said, Hall of Presidents or Country Bears. We actually stood underneath Cinderella Castle where all the big like murals are. And it's funny because from there you can watch the rain and see everyone running and exiting the park. So it's pretty entertaining. But there's a lot of options for you to not leave the park in the rain.
Yeah, and it will be miserable getting onto the monorail, or they might shut down the ferry boats if the weather is too bad at the time. So you might even be kind of kicking yourself in the backside a little bit and making it worse for yourself by trying to leave at the most inopportune time. And like you said, there are a ton of things to do inside at Magic Kingdom. Like, they've thought of this, and every land has its indoor show. You have PhilharMagic, you have Carousel of Progress, Country Bears, the Tiki Room, Hall of Presidents, and these attractions, even when you're waiting for them, you are waiting indoors. So
Yeah,
just
Midway Mania is another one too. You wait indoors for Midway Mania.
see, that's another great example. Space Mountain, a lot of times it does kind of come out of the ride, but a lot of times you're waiting inside as well. So think about those things. Pirates at Walt Disney
Mhm.
World is a huge indoor queue. And yeah, maybe the line will be longer for Pirates when it's raining, but you're going to want to ride it on your trip. And even if you're waiting longer, it's better than leaving and not being in the park at all. So,
Yeah.
just something to think of when we talk about scary things that can happen at Walt Disney World or Disneyland. Yes, it's going to rain. The weather's not going to be perfect. Now, I have another one, and this is going to be a big deal, especially right now in the first few months of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And this is also a big deal with Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. What happens when there's that big ride that you just have to experience? It's such a big part of your vacation, and maybe you woke up at 6:45, you set that alarm and you got a boarding group for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, or you bought the lightning lane for Tiana's, or you bought the lightning lane for Star Wars Rise of the Resistance, And now it's time for you to ride it. And the ride has broken down for the day. And you don't know if it's going to return. Maybe you were planning on park hopping and not even being at this park anymore. How do you adjust when things like this happen on your theme park day? Because as a vacationer, you can't just say, it's down today, I'll come back in a couple days. You might have to really do some adjusting to your vacation if you want to come back to that park another day, or if you just have to suck it up and kind of say, maybe this isn't the most important thing. How do you prioritize that stuff on your trips, Sarah?
To be honest, I'm pretty easygoing, but if it's something like how if I'm with a bunch of people, it's like you got to have a chat and be like, okay, who thinks this is really important? Who thinks it's not? If I'm by myself, or like when we were there, thankfully, I don't think Rise ever broke down in the times we were supposed to go. Did it? I don't remember. Maybe once it broke down in the time we were supposed to go.
It was pretty new at the time and still working.
It broke down when we were on it.
It did break down when we were on it, but it was pretty good for the most part that entire week.
Yeah. But ultimately, I mean, if it's really, really important to me, like how I really, really want to ride Tiana, I'm going to wait it out. Unless I have a reservation, like a dining reservation or something that I'm not going to pay the money to not show up. And so I really would have to take it on a case-by-case basis. But if it was like Tiana, no, I'm going to wait it out and see what's going to happen. But if I've ridden it before, I'm going to be like, it's fine, whatever. Like, as much as I love Rise, I'd be like, well, I've ridden it before, I'm fine.
Well, that is definitely a benefit that people like us have when we've been to the parks a lot, and we can say, I've done it before. If I don't do it on this trip, it's not the end of the world. And there are some people who this is a once in a lifetime, once every 5 years, something like that vacation. And these things are a little more important to them. This is going to seem funny coming from me as somebody who totally, like the last time I went to Walt Disney World on a vacation, it was 2018 when I still lived in Arizona. And I knew exactly what time every day we were going to be hopping to the next park. And I knew we were going to do this here and this here. But even if you are an obsessive planner, and I am one, what you need to do is plan for contingencies. Okay, let's say that Happily Ever After is rained out on the first night we're there, and that was going to be our Happily Ever After night. Well, if they're not doing it, this is a big one at Disneyland when they often have to cancel the fireworks because of wind and because of fires in the area or things like that. Have the day that you are going to do that thing, make the things that are 100% drop dead important to you at the beginning of the trip. So if you have to cancel it the first day, you can do it the second day, or you can do it the third day. Try to make sure that you're giving yourself the ability to push back the things that mean the most. Your last day, and I'm not telling anybody how to do a Walt Disney World or Disneyland vacation, but especially with Walt Disney World, where there are 4 parks, there are 2 water parks, there's Disney Springs, there's mini golf, there's all of these different things that you can do. Your last day on the trip should be doing anything that wasn't high on the list that you do want to try. Doing things again that you really loved.
Yeah.
Maybe taking your time and taking more pictures and doing that kind of stuff. The early days are when you want to be doing the things that are the most important to you, because you still have the chance to push them off if something goes wrong. And that's something that, even though I do obsessively plan to the minute, I was always like, okay, I'm in Magic Kingdom. It's the Monday of my trip, the first day of my trip, and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad has a 15-minute wait. I'm riding my favorite ride now so that I make sure I've done it. And if I ride it again on Friday, cool. if I don't get to ride it again on Friday, at least I did it on my first day of the trip. So I got my favorite ride out of the way. And I think that's very important, especially for Walt Disney World. Disneyland is so much easier to not overplan because the parks are right across the esplanade from each other, because you can take it a little easier. There aren't fast passes or lightning lanes on the Fantasyland rides. There are a lot of different reasons why it is easier to sort of go with the flow on a Disneyland vacation than with a Disney World vacation.
Yeah, in Disneyland, though, you really do have to plan for rides like Radiator Springs Racers, because that is like a common breakdown ride. So like how we did it and we rope dropped. I know not everyone is a rope dropper. Normally I am not, but because I was by myself and with you and Courtney, it was like, okay, we're going to rope drop. And it's like, if you want to ride it and you know you want to ride it and not have to worry about all day checking to see if it's broken down and there's a huge crowd of people waiting to get in line, rope drop up that ride, because ultimately, even if you get there and it's a 30-minute wait, that's still probably almost 60 minutes shorter than you're going to wait later.
That is the perfect example of what I'm saying, because in 2021, when we went with you to Disneyland and we rope dropped Radiator Springs Racer, knowing that that is not the best time of day for it. It's so much cooler at night. But you also said you have to ride this ride while you're here. So we did. We rope dropped it, got it right out of the way first thing in the morning. We didn't even race against somebody. They didn't even have another car going up against us yet. But then on Thursday, when Courtney and I were doing our last day closing down California Adventure, we waited for an hour and a half at night to ride Radiator Springs Racers, because we knew at that time, okay, we are now later in our vacation. We've done all the things that we really, really want to do. We've checked off everything that's a must do on our trip. So doing Radiator Springs Racers at night was also important to us. Mm-hmm. So we just sucked up that 90-minute wait, and it ended up being every bit of that 90 minutes, but it was worth it because we got to ride it at night. And then we just left the park for the day because there wasn't anything else that we really had to do that night. We got a little bit extra sleep. The next morning, we were able to feel a lot more rested for our last day at the parks. So that's one of the things that you can do if you plan to just make sure you do something early, and then later, once you've made sure you've done it, think about having the absolute best experience.
Yes, absolutely.
So did you think of any other scary things that can happen when you are at Walt Disney World or Disneyland?
Well, one, it's funny. It kind of has to do with like what we were just talking about, the rides breaking down, but it made me laugh because I have been only on rides has this ever happened to me, but the ride breaking down when you're on it. I have been seeing that so frequently recently on social media of people getting stuck on these rides, but not like stuck like the big scary rides in some places where they flip you upside down for like an hour and you're just done till the firefighters get you, but like on a Disney ride where then they have to escort you off. Like, yes, that's scary, but at the same time, depending on where you are in that ride, I've seen so many people that are like, oh, look, we got to walk through it. And I'm like, oh, must be nice.
The one time I was escorted off of Star Wars Rise of the Resistance and we went through the back rooms, like,
oh, that's right.
And I was so hoping to see like Chewbacca with his head next to him, like eating a sandwich in one of the break rooms. It didn't happen, but I was just like, man, that would be funny.
That's so funny. Oh
or gosh. Just like Rey throwing down a Diet Dr. Pepper or something, you know? Something right. Completely out of universe, but
that's kind of like, so speaking of scary things that have happened, this was like truly kind of scary that happened to me. And I know I've talked about it on the show before, but when California Adventures was still California Adventures and had big California in front of it, I was a teenager, and my cousin, or it was my mom and I and some friends of ours with their son who was pretty little at the time. Well, I climbed up into the O for a picture and jumped out and I dislocated my knee. That is scary because then I'm laying on the ground. And this is something, so some backstory. Previous to this, I had had knee surgery because I dislocated my knee. And it took part of the bone off. So I had to have surgery. So I've always had a really weak knee. Well, I didn't think about it because I'm a teenager and I'm an idiot, right? So I jump off. Well, then I'm laying in front of this sign in the Esplanade. And my mom is just like freaking out, like, we need help, we need help. And finally somebody got security and security came over and I got a ride in the little cart. So on the like happy side of this, as I got to see the whole backstage area of California Adventures, because they couldn't take me through the park on this little security vehicle with my knee all messed up and nasty. And so I got a tour on this golf cart looking thing by this super, super nice security woman as they took me to first aid through the whole back thing. And they had been practicing in one of the big airplane hangars they had back there for a parade. And like, it was so cool. I don't recommend hurting yourself because you may not get the same treatment I did, but that is definitely something scary that happened, but turned into something that, though I was uncomfortable at the time, was kind of cool when I look back at it now when I'm almost 40 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned being 40 years old and, when I was a teenager and an idiot, and I'm just going to say, I know you at 40, Sarah, so.
I'm an idiot. I just don't make the greatest life choices sometimes.
No, she is not an idiot. I just wanted to get that joke in there. But here, as somebody who is now a parent, and this is something that is legitimately scary that can happen at Walt Disney World or Disneyland. And I don't know if a lot of people think about the procedures about how to go about doing this, but let's say you lose your little one. It is huge. These parks are all huge. And it is very, very easy to get separated. You're looking at the map. You're trying to look at your watch, see what time you have your boarding group for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. You also have your Lightning Lane coming up for Pirates of the Caribbean. You have your reservation at Jungle Skipper Canteen. And you're juggling all of this stuff. And your kid sees Mickey walking down the street and bolts. Yep. And it can be very, very scary. This isn't even a joke about how scary it can be. But luckily, I think if you keep your head about you and you don't over panic, Disney is very, very good at resolving these situations and resolving them quickly. You can be pretty sure that your little one, your 5 to 10-year-old kid, is not going to be getting on a bus. They're not going to let a kid by themselves get on a bus, get on the monorail. So odds are these kids are still in this theme park. And when they're in the theme park, it's not that nothing can go wrong for them, but it's still pretty good chances that you're going to be able to find them. Just something to think about when you're going to the parks. Talk to your kids and say, hey, if you get lost, go to a cast member. Show them what the cast members' badges look like. Every once in a while, when you're on Main Street, point out where there are cast members. Even just talk to cast members periodically so that your kids start to feel comfortable going up to cast members if they have a question or if they have a concern. Don't bother them, obviously, but if you are wondering something, instead of trying to figure it out, just politely go up to a cast member and ask them, and then your kids will start to see the CMs as somebody they can go to if they have any type of question. And getting lost is one of those that then they will think of that in that situation.
Yeah, and like the easiest cast members it seems to find are like the janitors or like the sweepers and all of those people, because they're just walking around like you see cast members everywhere, right? But it's like walking down the street if you're on Main Street and you're like, oh, well, I can't stop the man driving the horses. So it's like, oh, but there's a guy right there who's sweeping something up. I can stop to this person. Or, oh, that lady that's standing over by the fruit cart, I can go talk to her. And so Yeah, there's so many options. It's like, and like you said, it's unless for some reason your kid really fits in with some other family going out the exit, they're not going to let some like random child who is alone walk out those turnstiles. And if they do, I'd be very concerned. But I've never seen that happen in all the times I've been there. So yeah, it's scary, super scary. But at the same time, yeah, just make sure your kid's informed. Maybe stick one of those little tattoo things on them. I've seen those on TikTok and stuff of parents make, it's like a tattoo they put on their kid and it has the parents' contact information. So if they get lost, they can show someone and then have their parent contacted. And I'm like, see, there we go.
And another thing from somebody who has friends who are cast members, and a big deal, something that can be really, really beneficial, is make sure that your kids actually know your name.
Yes.
That is a very, very big deal, and something that a lot of families don't think of when they're going to the theme parks. And, you know, they'll go up to one of my friends who's a cast member, and they're like, okay, what's your name? And, you know, they'll tell them the name, and then, okay, and what's, you know, your mom's name? Oh, it's Mommy. Oh, okay, that's not going to really help, because there are a lot of people who answer to Mom here. So,
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
so those are just a couple things for, you know, an actual scary occurrence. Yes. Now, one that I got to experience in some level, but I didn't get to experience it the whole way because I wasn't on vacation. But a lot of people don't think of everybody who was on vacation when the world shut down in 2020. And there was a lot that people had to do in that situation. Things got scary, and people had to find a way to get on airplanes that weren't their flight. And everybody was going back to where they lived. Yeah, there were tons of flights leaving MCO, but everybody was filling those up really, really quickly. And here you are, you find out, you know, Disney, Universal, they gave people a couple days of advanced warning, but still, even with the parks open and that advance warning, if you're on vacation, I imagine you're still going to want to take advantage of that. So you're still taking the kids to the parks while you're trying to call MCO, while you're trying to call Delta or United or whoever to try to get your flights changed. You're trying to buy masks if you're thinking that masking was a big deal. Yep. You're just wondering, how safe is it to be in these parks? Like, major emergencies can happen when you're there and you have no idea to prepare for them. Hurricanes at Walt Disney World. Another thing that you have to be prepared, especially during hurricane season, that things might change drastically and might change at a moment's notice. Now, the majority of hurricane warnings that have happened around the Walt Disney World area in the past few years have ended up just emptying out the parks and have been like a blessing in disguise a little bit. But you can't guarantee that's always going to be the case. And you just want to make sure everybody's safe, happy, healthy. This is a good chance to get the travel insurance, even if you're a little wary of paying extra money and everybody's trying to, you know, keep their vacations in a certain budget. But maybe your family, if this is that once in a lifetime vacation and you don't want to risk it coming down and then having it be ruined, maybe you do want to look into those kind of things. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what to maybe consider. And those are some scary things that can happen at Walt Disney World or Disneyland. Do you have any other smaller ones that, so we can kind of end this episode in a little more of a fun way than pandemics and hurricanes?
I was trying to think of some smaller ones that I was thinking, it's not small, but how Galaxy's Edge shut down a while ago because of the whole Microsoft thing. That's scary.
There was another, that was
death everywhere.
But that's another good example that you have to be prepared for whatever could happen.
Right.
It's not 1960s Disneyland anymore where these things are being operated,
Right.
sort of on the spot. They're being all run by computers. There's internet stuff going on here, so stuff can break down, and things break down more now than ever. You can see it with Tiana's Bayou Adventure. The more intricate the animatronics, the more special effects that are involved in the ride, the more of a chance it will break down a lot. And you just have to consider that, and it has to be part of your trip. Another thing that I think is something that can be scary is when the kid gets the idea that there's the souvenir they absolutely need,
Yep.
and you have to figure out where to find it, because you might see that one thing the first day of the trip and have no idea where it is located, where they're selling it. And this is where you kind of have to break out of your comfort zone sometimes. And yeah, maybe it's the first day of your trip and your kid sees somebody with some sort of stuffed animal or some sort of toy. If they say, I want that, go up to the family and say, where did you get it?
Because it could be they didn't even buy it on this trip. That seems to be the biggest thing. Or my child is notorious for he'll see something in a store or something, and like a day later I'll be like, I really want this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Where did you see that? I don't remember. And I'm like, really? Okay. Where have we been in the last 24 hours?
Well, that's a big deal. I want to address both of those things that you said. One is, let's say it is early in the trip and you see them and you're saying, okay, I want to know where we can get this. And they say, well, we didn't get it at Walt Disney World. We got it X, Y, or Z. You might be able to order that from Amazon and have that at your Disney resort by the end of your trip. And then your kid doesn't know the difference, that it wasn't purchased at a Disney store.
Right.
The other thing, and this is huge, is yes, there are the big stores, World of Disney, the Emporium. There are the stores that have a lot of the same stuff, but it's very possible that that thing could have been purchased in the Pirates gift shop or Tatooine Traders at Hollywood Studios. And maybe you don't have park hopper tickets and you've already done that park for your vacation. So you do have to keep those things in mind. Always ask. It's better to ask the question and feel like you're annoying people than to find out later that you have to waste an entire park day to go into Tatooine Traders and buy that baby Yoda whatever.
Right. Right.
So, Sarah, this was fun. We talked about things that can be scary on a Disney vacation. Have yourself a very happy Halloween.
Thank you, you too, and happy Halloween, everyone.
This has been episode 196 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Please make sure to like and comment on the YouTube channel. And of course, make sure you are subscribed. We'll be back next Thursday with another brand new episode. Until then, have a great week.